Hi, this is David Odell with OdellCompleteConcrete. Today what we're going to be doing is removing two rooms in this house. The concrete slabs came way up in the middle, about 2.5 inches raised up in the middle of the floor. You can see all the cracks. That crack right there is about 3/4 of an inch wide, and somebody put some caulking in there at some point. So when it's 3/4 of an inch wide like that, you would assume there's no reinforcement in there, no steel reinforcement. And that's what I assumed, that there wasn't any. However, there was as soon as we started jackhammering. It didn't do a whole lot of good because most of it was on the ground and it was rusted out. And it's really hard to get wire mesh, especially that 6-gauge centered, because it bends just by walking on it really easily. So it's virtually impossible to center it. You go with the 10-gauge wire, 6-inch squares, you can dobie that up and it stays pretty flat. So once we started chipping this out, we hit the wire, so we had to really polarize it to get it out from the wire. Even though it was on the bottom, it just made it difficult to remove. As soon as we opened this up, we ran into a lot of roots, a lot of tree roots in here. And the nearest tree to this house, all the way around it, is about 20 feet away. But what happened here is this foundation here is just a slab on grade. And it looks to me like they either poured the foundation first, and then they just poured the 4-inch slab on top of the foundation, which created a cold joint, which is where the roots went in, and then they lived under the whole slab of this entire house. And we're just concentrating on these two rooms for now, but inevitably we're gonna have to hit all the rooms in this house. But here's your wire. You can see how corroded it is. A lot of it's on the ground, some of it isn't. I mean, you can see it didn't do a lot of good, in this floor, because it's not that strong. It bends, in other words. So the trees were the roots easily raised this floor up and separated all the cracks. And once we chip out a lot, we get a nice space in here. We can actually start prying some bigger chunks into the hole. Now also, what was interesting we found here is they did have a vapor barrier, and that was still intact. So all the roots were underneath the plastic. And we also found a lot of copper water lines that were just buried, or actually were just underneath the plastic, laying on the dirt. And there was no sleeve around them. It's been here for about 40 years, or 40 plus years easy. The pipes were in good condition. We're going to show those as well as we get into this. Here's your roots kind of wrapped around the pipes, and there's a lot of them in here, and they're rather big. Now we believe this is from a ficus tree. The ficus trees are in the backyard, so these roots came all the way from the backyard. We're actually at the front of the house, so you can imagine what the rooms before this room looks like the bedrooms, for instance. Now that tree wasn't the culprit. That's a city property tree, and we've determined that wasn't the tree because when we cut the roots open, we cut a root from both trees, the ficus and the tree in the front. And what we found is the ficus matched because they both had a sap or white liquid coming out from the ficus and the roots under the house. So the ficus was the culprit here. We're going to get all this concrete out of here. We're going to just rough break as close as we can to these walls. But we can't go underneath the wall because they're all load-bearing walls. And that would cause some serious drywall damage and maybe even some structural if we did that. So we'll break up close to the edge of this wall, and the footing should hold it, and it should crack relatively clean on the inside of the footing edge of these walls. We ended up running into 2 3/4 inch coppers that ran all the way the distance under this floor, and 1/2 inch as well that went across. There's a bathroom right behind that wall there, and that's where one of these pipes were leading. And one was leading to a hose bib on the outside. The other one I never did. The 1/2 inch I never figured out where that one went. It just doesn't make sense where it goes actually. We were fortunate not to break any of these copper lines because they were under pressure. And that was pretty tricky with running the jackhammer and the concrete being poured directly on top of the pipes. But here's the tree roots, and you can see the liquid oozing out of it. And then we went to the backyard, cut a ficus tree limb, and had the same liquid, so that's where it started from, which was approximately 45-50 feet from the back. That's how far these roots traveled. But it made a really nice place for them to grow. This dirt underneath here was very loose on top of the plastic. And then you had the visqueen over it, so it created a moisture barrier there. So the roots had plenty of liquid. What happened is, on the back side of the house, in between the slab and the footing, the roots came in between. They came in thin. As soon as they get through the crack, they blow back up. And that's what they did here. So what I think happened, it was probably a monolithic pour with the foundation slab, but a lot of times they'll go around these footings and seal them up with your first load. Then you may have to wait a few hours to get that next load, which is usually your slab. By that time you've created a cold joint, and now your slab is separate from your foundation, and you get a lot of movement, and then you get roots going through there, and this is how this happened. There's all your plumbing still intact. We've cut the visqueen back. We've left about 6 inches out, sticking out from the old slab. That way we can put the new plastic in and overlap. As far as doweling goes, we're not going to do any doweling here. So what we've created here around this entire perimeter is a keyway. The concrete's going to go underneath the slab, and it's going to go over the top. What we'll use is concrete glue all the way around the perimeter the day of the pour. And that way the old concrete and the new concrete will bond, and that'll help seal that crack all the way around the edge. Now from side to side we checked it with a straight edge and a level, and it's dead level now all the way across from point A to point B. So now it's good for tile. Other than the remnants of what you see left, that it still has a little slope on it, maybe a 1/4 inch, so that can be built up with some thin set or a floor underlayment prior to the tile going on. So we're going to do the 3/8 rebar 4-inch concrete with fiber mesh, 3000 psi. And since we're indoors, pouring directly on plastic, I'm going to throw in 1% polar set, which is an accelerant. And those work pretty good, although I like calcium chloride better. It seems to really kick it a little harder. We can't use calcium chloride because they've discovered that it's actually corrosive to rebar. So now we're going with a different type of accelerator that won't affect the steel reinforcement. You can see the wire sticking out from the edge of the old concrete as well. And that'll also tie in the 2 pours. The only difference is now is I actually bent the wire up so it's not on the ground anymore. Now all this rebar that we're putting in here, we'll dobie that up with some little blocks, 2-inch blocks. Now that plumbing copper pipe is still there. It's just underneath the plastic. This is kind of what it looks like just before you pour. Now we're bringing in the pump hose. We're bringing this in here at about a 5-inch slump. We want it stiff. so it'll go off. On the edges, we'll just burn those in with a trowel, make them nice and flush. Then any other defects in the existing edges will just be floated up with some floor underlayment material or thin set. We won't put any joints in this. We're just going to let it do whatever it wants to do, which isn't going to be much because we've got this rebar in here, which is a lot stronger than the wire mesh. And we can actually center it and it's not all bent up. This concrete took about a good 4 hours before we could get our nice a nice smooth trowel finish on here. Now we'll just go around the edges with some hand floats and try to burn it in as tight as we can with a hand float. And then of course we'll go around it with a trowel a few times to really work those edges in tight. Then of course the concrete gluing between the two will marry it together as one. Now we're running the little funny float over it, and that's a fiberglass unit. Also, we ran the funny trowel as well. It usually will save you one pass on your knee boards if you can run a funny trowel. Now we don't have to do a real spectacular finish on this since it's going to be covered with a flooring anyway, but we're going to get it as smooth as possible. I don't know if you noticed in the beginning of this video, the homeowners actually helped us do the demo. That's who you see in the video in the beginning demo. Well, that's what it looks like when it's all done. Nice and smooth and ready for flooring. Anyway, thank you for watching my video. If you like these and you want to see the newest ones coming out, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell, and that way you'll get notified as soon as I upload them. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.